Welcome, folks, to this introduction of Eugene O'Neill Review, Volume 44, Number 2, Fall 2023, my last issue as an editor of this journal that I've come to love oh so very much. When I, along with Bess and Zander, took over the helm about 5 years ago, one of the messages we got loud and clear from the society was we needed to expand our readership and we needed to expand our base of contributors. We've tried. And I think if you look back over the last 10 numbers, you'll see that we've done a pretty good job with that. But this issue, we're introducing something that takes us in a whole new direction. And I want to talk to you about that first before I move into some other things. Xian Zhu, many of you know as the translator of Rob Dowling's biography of O'Neill into Chinese, as well as a formidable scholar in her own right, agreed to write a used books entry for us this time, both in Chinese and in her own translation into the English. Why? Well, first of all, as you may not know, China accounts for more hits and downloads of the review than any country other than the United States. Indeed, as we eased out of the polemic, as we eased out of the pandemic, hits in the US and elsewhere went down by about 16%. Hits from China went up by about 35%. So Xian has stepped up to re-review the formidable collection Eugene O'Neill in China and International Centenary Celebration from the early 90s. This was the ACTA, basically, along with some roundtables and lectures from one of the very first international conferences that the Eugene O'Neill Society organized way back when in the 90s. It's a superb collection in its own right, and Chinese readers will appreciate the Chinese, no doubt the English versions as well. English readers will appreciate the English version, and everybody who reads it, I think, will benefit mightily from learning so much more than I at least have known about the centrality of O'Neill and O'Neill studies to the Chinese Academy and to the Chinese theater scene. A fascinating act of contextualization, a wonderful act of generosity from Xian, and I hope a good way for us as the editorial team outgoing in my case to say thank you so very much to our many, many readers in China. Now, that's not all. We have all sorts of wonderful other things coming this term, this in this issue too. Katie Johnson, EONS president, like myself, outgoing, supplies the introduction to our Lost and Found entry for this issue. We've reprinted, Eugene printed for the first time, O'Neill's The Silver Bullet, his early draft towards the Emperor Jones, written early in the fall of 1920, before he dashed off that great play with remarkable celerity. I know you'll benefit from Katie's sensitive and pointed contextualization of the piece and from the piece itself. The three essayists for this issue are happily familiar names. Indeed, you'll hear from several of them later on today. bess.rowen, our wonderful performance review editor, expands on work that she published in her recent book with the University of Iowa Press, Between the Lines. In this outing, rather than focusing on a range of modern playwrights, she digs deep into the O'Neill canon, early, middle, and late, and discusses O'Neill's use of stage directions as a matter of form as well as genre. Provocative, fascinating, kind of disorienting, in that she's asking us to look at O'Neill in effect simultaneously as a stage and a print phenomenon. And golly, she does it really well. Zander Brietzke, who many of you will recall, gave us a preview of his previous book from Yale University Press in an issue 2 or 3 years ago, now steps up to give us an advanced look at his next book on O'Neill and the Ashcan School of Artists, forthcoming from McFarland Press. Zander this time particularly deals with O'Neill's durable and complicated relationship with the artist John Sloan, which Zander argues influenced O'Neill far beyond the fairly brief period of their acquaintanceship and friendship. Like Bess, he ranges from the early to the late material, a bravura performance I'm sure you'll enjoy us. Eric Fraisher Hayes, the great director, the fellow behind the camera for all these spots. I'm sorry, the director, Ali, the woman behind the camera, great team, shares with us a piece about what he calls the pandemic pivot, the birth of Dow House Films. Eric, of course, was busy staging many plays by O'Neill in and around Dow House when the pandemic hit. He pivoted, to use his term, with quickly and effectively to making films. Many of us have already seen and praised his films of Beyond the Horizon and Welded. Although we're delighted to have Eric back directing live theater, it's really nice to be able to get, let's say, an autobiography of this transitional period in his career and this transitional period in O'Neill studies, theater studies, and American culture more broadly. The practitioner's colloquium, to use a term somewhat loosely, is supplied this time by our buddy Ronald E. Ron Quirk. Many of you know from the genial and informative meetups that he's been hosting online from his home in Arlington, Virginia since the pandemic. I asked Ron to share with us some observations about, responses to, and meditations on that whole process, what it taught him, what the group taught its own members, and how this all ties into O'Neill studies today. He did a magnificent job. That too is a piece I'm sure you'll all enjoy. Well, that's it for me here. I'm going to pass things over to our wonderful performance review editor, bess.rowen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that handoff, Alex. It is me, bess.rowen, the performance review editor, here with a really exciting section for this particular issue of the Eugene O'Neill Review. So we have 6 performance reviews this time. And as Alex said in the first section there are some repeat names, and there are some really exciting moments of people having more than one piece of writing in this particular issue of the journal, which actually I think provides some really interesting connective tissue between the various sections. So I happen to be the person starting us off in this particular performance review section. I reviewed a production of Huey, which was directed by Barbara Bosch in New York. And I really enjoyed being able to review that as I was writing the essay that also appears in this journal, in this issue of the journal. So you will certainly find some connections between the performance review and the essay that I hope increase your appreciation and enjoyment of both. They certainly did while I was writing them. So hopefully that continues on to you. As you know, not a very often done piece. So it was really exciting to get to see it and to see it really fully realized. But I'm going to move on to much more interesting, in my mind, performance reviews written by other people. The second performance review, and in fact, the next 2, come to us from far abroad. Well, not far abroad. And of course, a place not too far from O'Neill's heart ever. But these 2 come to us from the Eugene O'Neill International Festival of Theatre in New Ross, Ireland. So that's in County Wexford. And we, of course, did leave the United States, but we did not leave our wonderful director, Eric Fraisher Hayes, who directed these 2 productions that he took with him to Ireland. So we've got performance reviews of both of those productions. The first is by another name familiar to us, hopefully all of us in general, for her excellent work, but certainly to people in this particular issue of the journal, as Alex just mentioned her, Katie N. Johnson reviewed Welded, which was the first production that everyone saw at New Ross. And this is a really wonderful performance review that shows all of Katie's strengths that we already knew. She's an excellent analyzer of text, but she also really knows how to write about performance. And I really enjoyed reading this, and I felt like I had a good visual of what this looked like, even though unfortunately I was not in New Ross. I would say the same thing for Richard Hayes's performance review of Shell Shock, which is the other New Ross piece that appears in this issue. So again, we have folks who are giving us an excellent sense of the context of the festival, of being in Ireland, and of these O'Neill pieces, particularly for Shell Shock, which is, again, not often done, and is such an interesting portrait of what we now call PTSD. So he does a really wonderful job, Richard, of explaining the way that this particular plot hits us now, and what, of course, people at the time would have thought about in terms of seeing something like Shell Shock PTSD shown on stage at this time, at the time that the play was written, but certainly still something we're dealing with today. So check that out. That's a really interesting performance review. Then we move on to California, but we do not move on from Eric Fraisher Hayes, which is great. So we have two Dow House performance reviews, of course. Eric keeps himself very busy, and we are all grateful for it and the better for it. And that is very clear from the first performance review from Dow House we have, which is by Dan McGovern, and it is of a production of A Moon for the Misbegotten, which is honestly my favorite O'Neill play. So I really, really enjoyed reading this review. And of course, again, a great sense of what it feels like to be sitting there watching this production in Dow House, and, not just about the play, but about this specific production in time, which is one of my favorite things about reading these performance reviews. They're little time capsules. And last but certainly not least of our Eric Hayes productions from this particular section, we've got The First Man, which again is a show that a play that is not done terribly often, but Titian Lish, who is a new name and face for us in this journal, does a wonderful job of really, again, rendering the performance realm into print in a really beautiful way. Titian is a professor and blends clearly in practice the scholarship and the performance practice very clearly in the work. So we can really see that front and center in this review, which I truly appreciate. So definitely check that out. And then we complete this section with an unusual entry, which comes to us from, as I'm sure many of you know, Sheila Garvey's wonderfully curated visit to the Irish Repertory Theatre some months ago now. So although there were no O'Neill shows playing at that moment, obviously we as a foundation and a journal have a close relationship with Irish Repertory Theatre. So Karen O'Reilly was directing Endgame, and I asked David Palmer if he would ever so kindly write us some sort of a performance review that talks about seeing that show, which is obviously not written by Eugene O'Neill, but what does it mean to watch Beckett with O'Neillians? And in the context of, folks who know a lot about O'Neill. So I think that's a really interesting take on everything as well. And I really enjoyed how game he was to do that for me. So thank you, David. But definitely check it out. And the rest of that series, the other part of that series, there were two productions, will be forthcoming. So stay tuned for more. But that's all we've got this time for the performance reviews. And with that, I pass it on to our very own Zander Brietzke.
Thank you very much, Bess. We've got 3 books to review this time in the review. We've got some momentum going, and we've got a theme around the Provincetown players in this issue. The first book is by Marcia No, 3 Midwestern Playwrights, which is a terrible title, I think, but I was not consulted. It's Indiana University Press, so it's a good university press, but it's really one playwright, Susan Glaspel, and a couple of dudes that are with her, Jig Cook, her husband, and Floyd Dell, a writer, but not so much a playwright. But what's fascinating about No's book is that its detail in talking about the Midwestern part, the Midwestern city of Davenport, Iowa, from which all three of these writers hailed, and showing this river town on the Mississippi River in Iowa at the turn of the last century, going to the 19th to the 20th century, talking about the sort of the libraries, the literary folk there, the German immigrant population that made the town more highly educated than most Midwestern small towns. The influence of Jig Cook's mother, who had this farm outside town and sort of ran these sort of literary salons. It's all fascinating stuff. And you can see how this town did kind of help generate these really three quite different people who were all, really interesting and unique. And when they went to New York, they brought a lot with them, and they brought their Midwestern heritage with them. And No's book, which is reviewed by Emmeline Jovet, who's a Glaspell scholar, we reviewed her book a few issues back. It's a quite favorable review of No's work, and in detailing this aspect of it, this kind of life on the farm, life in the Midwest, which to me is an aspect of American life that simply does not, maybe cannot exist anymore. So there's a nostalgia aspect, and there's also kind of a sense of, what went wrong kind of thing. But it's but book's interesting, and so I encourage you to read it. The next book is Jeffrey Kennedy's Staging America, The Legacy of the Provincetown Players. And this book is reviewed by Drew Eisenhower, longtime member of the Society and a Glaspell scholar. Again, quite a favorable review. I had to keep telling Drew, no, you can't write 4,000 words about this. We've got to get this down to 1,800. I think we settled at 22. But he couldn't say enough good things about the book, and there's a lot to be said. It's a big book. It's a big event. It's a 600-page book. It's beautifully produced by the University of Alabama Press. It's got 31 illustrations. There's a lot of books on the Provincetown Players. Jeffrey's book references them all, brings them all, kind of talks about all of them in different sections, but then has, this is a book. This is Jeffrey Kennedy's lifetime book. It's his dissertation. He wrote on the Provincetown Players as his dissertation from NYU. And he's worked on it continually since then. So it's not dated in any way. It's quite fresh. I stole some things immediately for a project I'm working on, things that had never occurred to me before, I'd never seen before, and so quickly. And I think I even cited him, which is unusual for me. It's a book, I think, that's reminiscent of Sheila Garvey's book on the Circle and the Square Theater, and that, again, another dissertation project. Both of them were NYU grad students. And it's just absolutely commendable that 30 years later or so, the finished book comes out, and it's fresh, and it's new, and it's vibrant, and it's going to last for a long time. Last book, not the Provincetown Players, on Eugene O'Neill, but only Eugene O'Neill in part. And this is Mary Burke's Race, Politics, and Irish America. And Mary Burke is a professor at UConn in the English department. And of course, and this has an English sensibility. O'Neill's the only playwright in the bunch. O'Neill's relegated to one chapter, and in that chapter, he shares the stage with F. Scott Fitzgerald, which is a really interesting pairing, talking about the sort of Irish American and what they've taken from the Irish heritage. One anecdote that I'll share that the book focuses on from the Croswell-Bowen interview with Carlotta Monterey. I had always thought of a Black Irishman as an Irishman who lost his Catholic faith. That's basically, I think, what Carlotta says in that interview with Bowen. It's a completely different take on that in this book. The whole book is about how the Black Irish are the sort of down and out famine Irish who are at the bottom of the social stratus, bottom of the class, a reviled immigrant class when they come to America, and their struggle subsequently to literally turn themselves white. So there's a fascinating racial angle in this, and her book culminates with what she calls the white wedding, kind of a Billy Idol moment of the wedding of Grace Kelly. That's the last chapter in the book, and the sort of arrival of Irish America as white, which is a sort of counter narrative to the dominant one, which has always placed, the presidency of John F. Kennedy as that moment. So this gives a sort of gender switch on that. The racial emphasis, which of course is timely with where we are in the world today, where we are in this country today. It's fascinating readings throughout. And there's also, despite the fact that I've said that Professor Burke is in the literature department, not theater, there's a fantastic reading of Desire Under the Elms in the book, with reference to a production she saw by a woman director, Irish-American woman director in Ireland, and production photos from that look fascinating, and her reading of that play is fantastic. So worth it for that alone, I'd say. So that's it this time. A lot of good stuff, more to come in the future. Ready to hand it back to Alex.
Well, thanks so much, folks. And here ends my very happy and I hope productive term as editor of the Eugene O'Neill Review. I have big news to announce, and I've been saving it up for you, but I have learned that my friend and colleague, Bess.rowen, has agreed to step up as the new editor of the Eugene O'Neill Review. Thank you so much, Bess.
Oh, wow. Alex, that is so nice, but unfortunately not now, not quite yet. So if you wouldn't mind just taking that back.
Okay. Not quite what I was expecting, but hey, we're going to pull this together. We've worked as a team for 5 years, and it's not going to fall apart now. Look, I know, as many society members have known for longer than I have, you can always count on Zander Brietzke. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pass this editorship off to Zander with big thanks in advance for taking it over. Thank you so much, pal. Appreciate it.
Alex, I love you, buddy. I do, really. But I've seen this shit before.
Okay. Kind of thought we had an understanding, colleagues. But it's okay. I know where you're coming from. You know what we're going to do? We're going to open this one up. Any volunteers?
Well, I guess I was expecting this. My name is Chris Westgate. I'm going to be taking over as the new editor of the Eugene O'Neill Review in volume 45, number 1. It was almost 20 years ago that I published my first piece outside of graduate school in the Eugene O'Neill Review, which was edited by our own Zander Brietzke at the time. I couldn't be more delighted to be doing this at this point in my career. I want to thank Alex for everything he's done to help me get up to speed, try to figure out how everything is necessary to be successful in this job. I look forward to working with Bess and Zander as we go forward. Some of our goals, I want to embrace what Alex has done in previous issues, especially Lost and Found, Practitioner's Colloquium, and used books. But we have some ideas on some new sections that would complement that. I want to introduce a series of interviews with contemporary playwrights that are influenced by O'Neill. I want to introduce a pedagogical colloquium to complement the practitioner's colloquium. And also we want to develop something about opportunity for graduate students to get some of their work out, some of the most recent dissertations with cutting edge work. So it should be very exciting, and I look forward to working with everyone at the Penn State University Press. Thank you.